Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Snehesh Alex Philip. Well, the Netflix series on IC 814 has really run into a controversy about who the hijackers were, what really happened, within the aircraft, and also what really happened behind the curtains. That is, in terms of how the government handled the situation. Now, I have with me a very interesting guest who actually had a proper insight into what was really happening. I have with me the former High Commissioner to Pakistan and Canada, Ajay Bisaria, who was the PS to then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Welcome to the Prince, sir.
Thank you, Snehesh. Great to be here.
So, my first question to you, you were just about a month into your new assignment as the PS to Prime Minister Vajpayee. When did you come to know about this crisis?
Well, it was the 24th of December 1999, and Prime Minister Vajpayee had gone on a trip, I think, to the Northeast. And he was returning at about 6:30 or so in the evening, 6:30, 6:45. And I was in the flight with him when he traveled. I was in the car with him, the 15-minute ride from Air Force Station Palam to Racecourse Road, where the residence of the Prime Minister was. And I received a call then on the security, the SPG net, from my colleague, the other private secretary sitting in RCR, saying, please tell the Prime Minister there's been a hijack. And he gave me some very brief details that plane from Kathmandu, it was going to be landing in Amritsar. And I immediately cut the phone and informed the Prime Minister right there in the car as we were traveling on the road from the airport to Racecourse Road. So that's where I came to know of the hijack. That's where the Prime Minister came to know. And this was all the drama was taking place while the plane was in the air. Remember that at that time there was no communication system in the Prime Minister's aircraft, even when it was airborne.
So the Prime Minister came to know after he landed in India and he came to know through you. So what was his immediate reaction then?
Well, he appeared very surprised. He said, "Oh," and he asked me if there was anything else. I gave him, and I told him, of course, that in the next 5 minutes we would be at Racecourse Road, where the principal secretary and National Security Advisor Brijesh Mishra was waiting to brief him. So he just looked out of the window and contemplated, because he was so familiar with the India-Pakistan relationship. There've been a history of hijacks in this relationship, but it had been a decade since we'd had a hijack, and he knew that this was going to be a serious matter. But he just was very calm and waiting for his briefing.
Interesting that you mentioned about Pakistan, and there are many who say that this series actually tries to whitewash the role of the ISI and tries to pin the blame to the former killed Al Qaeda terrorist Osama bin Laden and the Taliban. But in your book, The Anger Management, you say that the MEA establishment in Pakistan had a different view of how this was going to pan out. If you could tell our viewers more about it, sir.
Yes. So, I spent 4 pages in my book, which is an account really of the entire 75, 76 years of the relationship. But the prism I put in this narrative of IC 814, the hijacking, was that I look at it from what was transpiring in Pakistan, how the Indian High Commissioner in Pakistan was in Islamabad, dealt with it, how he came to know about it, and how Pakistan reacted. So I think there is very little doubt. It's a settled issue that this was an ISI operation. That all the subsequent investigation has confirmed it. The only question was whether there was also an overlay of some kind of Al Qaeda involvement, because Osama bin Laden was at in Kandahar those days. But clearly, it had the fingerprints of ISI all over it, and it was clearly established by the subsequent investigation that this was an ISI operation. But the interesting thing is that when our High Commissioner in Islamabad, then G. Parthasarathi, came to know about it, he asked the Pakistani authorities for permission to go to Lahore to negotiate with the hijackers, and that permission was denied. It was held back, and he was finally told that the aircraft had taken off. So in Pakistan, of course, when Jaswant Singh tried to speak to his counterpart, he did speak to him, Abdul Sattar. He came with the same old or very old Pakistani narrative that this is a hijacking that India may have mounted on its own, a false flag operation, as India had done in 1970 with the hijacking of the aircraft Ganga, just to show Pakistan down and to cut Pakistan's links, the links between East and West Pakistan. So there was a reflex negative narrative that this is a false flag operation, and clearly the civilian establishment had no clue what the ISI was up to.
Well, the civilian establishment didn't have a clue in early in 1999 too, 1998, sorry, when the Kargil happened behind their backs. At least that is what the
Yeah, in
former prime minister
'99,
what he
exactly.
claimed. So you mentioned, the our ambassador G. Parthasarathi was not allowed to go to Lahore, drive down to Lahore. But an Indian diplomat from the Indian High Commission in Pakistan, got permission to go to Kandahar, right? And your book mentions a very interesting thing, that while, of course, you had all the Taliban around the aircraft and everything was under the Taliban control, this Indian official managed to spot Urdu speaking people in Pakistan who is suspected were from the ISI, and they were the ones who were giving directions. Am I right, sir?
That's right. That's right. So, what happens during the course of this hijack is that the plane lands in Kandahar, an Indian team is scrambled. Vivek Kajju was then the Joint Secretary looking after Pakistan. He's sent by Jaswant Singh. It includes other intelligence and security officials, and also they requisition A.R. Ghansham, the first secretary from the Islamabad mission, because there's no mission in Kabul
Afghanistan.
or in Afghanistan at all. So he lands there, and in his account, that is Ghansham's account, he spots all these Urdu-speaking people, and he sees telltale signs of the ISI's presence, even at the airport in Kandahar.
So one of the biggest criticism that this government continues to face, and in a way, as in the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, the way it handled, and in a way, I also feel the criticism is valid to a large extent, is the fact that they eventually let go of these terrorists who are now responsible for the killing of several hundreds, if not thousands, of people, including they were, one of these terrorists who was released had a role even in the 9/11 attack, right? And India as a country continued to face the brunt of Jaish-e-Mohammed, which was created by Masood Azhar a year after he was released. Uh, what were the compulsions that the government at that time faced, and what was Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's personal opinion on this situation, sir?
Well, he was certainly very unhappy with the outcome. He was certainly he didn't see it at all as a victory. He was relieved that the passengers were released, but he was quite unhappy about the price India had to pay. And if you step back and look at, with the benefit of hindsight, at the entire operation, it was certainly a security failure. At three different levels. One, the security failure of allowing a plane to be hijacked. The second was not having a super efficient anti-hijack protocol in place that there could be a quick reaction to that the hijacking. And thirdly, and this is more debatable, once the plane was outside India and the hijackers got into negotiating mode, the release of three dreaded terrorists. Now, as you know, the list was pared down from 36 terrorists and a demand of $200 million and so on, to just these three. Now, we can ask ourselves that question. It's a soul killing question of whether you would sacrifice 200 of your citizens, or a plane load of citizens, in exchange of three terrorists. But certainly, there was no clear policy position on what to do or what not to do. So I think it was these three different failures that certainly the government of the day recognized, and hopefully subsequent governments have corrected, because touch wood, we haven't had a hijack since, and we have multiple protocols in place now.
So in your book, Anger Management, you mentioned that when you told Prime Minister Vajpayee that the aircraft, that the passengers have eventually been released, he he wondered why did the pilot take off from Amritsar, right? The fact is that the aircraft did stay there, but India was unable to mount any kind of counter operation, either by the NSG or by the Punjab police, which clearly showed that there was some decision making which was lacking. So, in the whole thing, was Prime Minister actively taking part in decision making, or was it being done by the security establishment and the then External Affairs Minister Jaswant Singh?
Well, as you know, as soon as the hijack happened, the protocol in place was to have a crisis management group, the CMG, which met at that point under the chairmanship of the then cabinet secretary, who was Prabhat Kumar, that had all the elements of government that were required to take quick decisions. And this CMG was meeting, I believe, if I remember right, in Rajiv Gandhi Bhavan. And the CCS was only an overlay of decision making over the crisis management group. So the quick reactions to everything that happened in the first 2 hours was the responsibility of the CMG. And as you recall, the aircraft spent just less than 30 minutes
Yeah.
in Amritsar. And clearly, with the benefit of hindsight, that was the moment for India to act. That was the moment where the aircraft should have been stopped at any cost, and a security operation should have been mounted. Now, for whatever reason, or a multiplicity of reasons, that could not be done because the NSG commandos were not present, or there was some incoherence in the decision making. But the fact is that that could not be done. The pilot debatably could have become a hero by doing something creative at his level, and not letting the aircraft go. But he faced a terrible situation of his passengers being killed every 5 minutes, and blood-soaked knives being shown to him. So, and he was not a soldier. So I think the what the prime minister was reacting, and this was at a time when the families of the survivors had come to thank him, and he was not particularly happy about this situation, and he wasn't even in a mood to meet them. But he did go reluctantly. And when he and I were talking, he did ask me, almost aloud, that why didn't he just not take that aircraft away from Amritsar. So I think that was weighing on his mind, and that about the fact that despite the fact that this terrorism, or this hijack ended without too much bloodshed, there was a very high price to pay in terms of the three terrorists who were given away.
While initially I know for the fact that people in the security establishment were very, were upset about the release of these three terrorists. They didn't want to release them, and their argument has been and that if you have to, in comparison to the number of lives that are at stake here, there would be a bigger, more risk by letting them go. But your book also mentions the fact that there was a lot of media pressure, right? You had families of these coming on TV channels. For some strange reason, they had public, interactions, on-camera interactions with the families that the External Affairs Minister had. So, was there a lot of pressure on you for this? And had there been not such a pressure, maybe the decision taking would have been different?
Well, there certainly was pressure, and it you could debate this if as prime minister, as leaders, you are responsible for the lives of your citizens with or without pressure. But that pressure was certainly playing up. It was building up. Even they had even walked into a press conference that the external affairs minister was
Yeah,
doing and
yeah.
asked hostile questions, and understandably so. They were very agitated, and people who had loved ones in the aircraft, and their lives were at stake. But I think it was at some stage factored in. But the fact was that India was dealing with a very tough situation with very few options, and the option of use of hard power had reduced considerably, because the plane was in Kandahar, with a regime with which India had no relationship, if not a hostile relationship. And therefore, the also the impulse was to try and end the crisis very quickly rather than letting it move on. So I think it was a very tough choice, and the call was made to minimize the damage. As I said, from 36 terrorists to just three, but still a very high price to pay.
Absolutely. So, my last question to you: did you manage to watch the Netflix series?
Oh yes, I did. I just binge watched it 2 days ago for 5 hours straight. I think it was fascinating cinema, but I wish it had more clearly said that it was a blend of fact and fiction. That there was a lot of fictional elements in it, and I think it requires many disclaimers, in my view, saying that this is uh, based on events, but perhaps loosely, because I think if you go to it assuming that everything that is being depicted is gospel truth, then that's not the correct way to consume that serial.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. One thing is very clear. You've made it absolutely clear that there should be no doubt about the fact that this was indeed an ISI led operation. The fact is that all the three terrorists managed to get safe havens in Pakistan, and they have launched operations and terror based on the directions of the ISI. But thank you so much, Ambassador, for speaking to the print. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Snehesh.